think it's recording.
Yep, it looks like it.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this presentation of examining and tackling imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is definitely something that Gwen and I see a lot amongst our TRIO students, among our population of students that are part of TRIO and throughout the campus, and something that we may have encountered ourselves. So we're really looking forward to presenting for you, and we hope you enjoy the presentation. We'll go ahead and get started. So what we'd like to cover today is just a little bit examining what is imposter syndrome, kind of talking it through a little bit, identifying different types of imposter syndrome that you may experience or that you might identify with, and then finally some tips and things that you can take away. So we'll start with what is it, and where did this idea come from? So the idea first came or was first recorded in 1978 by a study conducted by Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes. And the study, interestingly, looked at only women, 150 women who had earned their PhDs and who were respected within their fields, and who were either, seen as industry leaders or recognized for their, academic excellence. And the interesting thing to the two researchers was that the women sort of predominantly did not really believe that they had really achieved all their success. They believed it was either a combination of luck or somehow they had managed to fool people into thinking that they were smart enough or capable enough. And so the researchers termed this phenomenon the imposter phenomenon.
So when you're experiencing imposter syndrome, there's kind of a cycle that you might go through with this experience. And this could look different for everyone, but typically what we tend to see is that a person who has this kind of fear of being seen as fake or being discovered to be a fraud in their position, they might really overwork and overfunction to try to compensate for that fear and their self-doubts. And so as they're doing that, they will usually have some pretty high achievements. They'll have good performance. They'll get good outcomes through all that work that they're putting in. And temporarily, those achievements or those good grades might make that person feel a little bit better. But then they end up feeling like a fraud again. They end up feeling like they're fake or like they don't belong. And just again, feeling that self doubt. So over and over again, they go through this cycle where they're overworking and then they're achieving and then they're still feeling that doubt. And then they're overworking and achieving and then still feeling that doubt. Another thing that we see really often with imposter syndrome is that people will not really accept compliments. They won't feel that positive feedback is maybe genuine, that if they are told that they're doing well or that their performance is good or they receive good outcomes from their work, they might think that they're kind of faking it or lying to people, or they're not really achieving like they seem like they are, that it's kind of not real or not deserved. And so they might disregard compliments. They might think, well, I don't know if I really deserve this or if I really am good enough. And again, that self-doubt can kind of creep in. A couple examples that you might relate to would be perhaps an employee who gets a raise or a promotion and they think that they don't really deserve it, or they maybe just got it by pure luck and not because they've been working hard for years or they've had a lot of success over time. They might feel that they just, it's not really fitting for them. Students might also feel out of place amongst their classmates or their peers, even if they have like good grades, good test scores. Maybe they're even better test scores or grades than their peers, but they might just again feel like they kind of don't really belong, or like everyone else knows more than me, or I'm missing something. This is not really my place. And just having a lot of self-doubt and feeling like they have to constantly prove themselves, even if they are actually doing well. Another example could be if people are friends with someone and they feel like they don't really deserve their acceptance, or they're afraid that those friends or people in their life might find out that they are fake or that they're not really who they're trying to be. that everything that they have is just because of luck, not because of their hard work or because of their skills, that it's kind of just an accident that anybody likes them or that they have good achievements, that it's, not really because of the work and the effort that they're putting in. And there's again this self-doubt and this fear that they are not good enough or not really who they want to be.
So we're gonna at this point talk about the five kind of popularly recognized types of imposter syndrome. And we'll get into them in a little bit more detail as we go, but they are the perfectionist, the superhero, the expert, the natural genius, and the soloist. And so we'll examine each type and then we'll give you some ways to address them if you feel like um, you relate to some of these categories of imposter syndrome. And again, these, or not again, for the first time, these in and of themselves are not necessarily bad traits that, each of us have. It's just that when you put them with imposter syndrome, sometimes they can kind of allow us to get on our own way with things. So we'll take a look at the first one and go from there.
Okay, so the types of imposter syndrome and how to address them. First, we have type 1, the perfectionist. These are going to be individuals that set really, really excessively high goals and standards for themselves. And then when they fail to reach those goals, because it's literally impossible to meet that goal of perfection, then they're going to feel a lot of self doubt and they're going to worry about, do I measure up? Am I good enough for whatever they're trying to do? This might be you if you've ever been accused of being a micromanager, like being really picky about the details of a project that you're doing or something along those lines. Or if you have a lot of difficulty with delegating, like asking for help from other people, giving parts of your project or tasks to others, if you kind of want to take on everything yourself so it gets done perfectly or the way that you want it to get done. But even if you are able to do that delegation, if you feel frustrated and disappointed in the results of especially like that team work or things are just, not measuring up to your standards, that might point to you being a perfectionist. You also might be this kind of person if you do miss that very high mark or you don't meet that really high goal. And then you are like, oh, I'm not cut out for this. I'm not good enough for this. And then you really get stuck, bogged down in those thoughts. And you're just thinking about it for, days on end about how you failed to meet that goal. And it just really, really brings you down. You also might feel like your work has to be completely perfect all of the time, 100% perfection, no matter what. If you relate to any of these things, you might be this type of person. So, addressing perfectionism, this form of imposter syndrome, some things that could help would be to own and celebrate milestones and really, congratulate yourself for even small achievements or steps in the right direction. This is a really big deal to avoid burnout. Burnout is a big problem, especially for students. But if you can celebrate those milestones and celebrate your achievements, that can help you be a lot more happy, a lot more content, and it can help a lot with your self confidence and kind of fighting that self doubt. Even little steps towards your bigger goals, that's a big deal, right? We should celebrate every little step that we make, every assignment that you turn in, every time you get a good grade, every time you finish a new class, and you're moving on to another semester, all those things are a big deal. Also, really helpful to try to accept mistakes that do happen because they're inevitable. We can always learn from our mistakes, and if we let them really pull us down, then we don't learn too much from them, but they do hurt our self confidence. So, if we can try to take those mistakes in stride, accept that they're always going to happen, small or big, and then try to learn from them. And you can also push yourself to act before you're ready. Instead of waiting for like the perfect time to start something or to make sure that every single little detail is in line before you begin, sometimes it's good to just get going. Your work is never going to be 100% perfect 100% of the time. And so if you're able to just jump into something, start a project, really just, hit the ground running, even if things are not perfectly ready, um, you're going to have a better chance of success because at least you're getting going, right? There might be flaws along the way, there might be mistakes in the process, things might not go according to plan, But as long as you get started, then you're not falling into this kind of perfectionism, procrastination, which is another really big thing that we see with people in this category is this worry that it's never going to be good enough. So, I don't even know where to start. Maybe I shouldn't even try. It's never going to be what I want it to be. And so we can kind of skirt around those problems by at least getting started and doing our best, even if there are mistakes along the way and it's not perfect, it's still good, and sometimes good enough is what we want to go for too.
The second type that we're going to talk about today is the superhero. Um, you'll see some similarities across a few of the types. The thing to remember about the superhero is that the superhero is very focused on needing to wear many wear many hats, fit in different roles, and like have all these kind of um, personas, and that they all have to be great at. So as it says on the slide, they're convinced that they're the phonies amongst like all their other colleagues who are actually superheroes, and so they're trying to measure up, they're trying to live up, and be considered on the same level with people that they think are like actually doing everything perfectly or in a great way. Um, and so it's that belief that they have to take on every role or identity themselves. Um, so one thing with the superhero imposter syndrome, I think, is a focus on um, needing to be everything to everyone. And that can be very draining and very demoralizing because also, it's very unlikely, even though you might feel like you are pushed into that role or maybe want to take on that role to prove yourself. Um, it's unlikely you're going to be everything to everyone. Um, so if we can go to the next one, um, ways to address this syndrome of being the superhero, um, just kind of recognizing that it's untenable, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to maintain that pressure on yourself to do everything for everyone else. I think I've seen this a lot with some of our students who have children in trio, not just in trio, but in higher ed in general. Sometimes, taking on those roles. And I think as parents, we always want to be everything to our kids. And um, sometimes it's at the expense of allowing them to grow and or allowing them to develop some of their skills because we want to do everything. So that's one reason that you may want to address this, however, because it could be damaging not only to your own mental health of never feeling like you can do everything, but also it can be damaging to other relationships that you have when you're doing everything for them and making other people feel perhaps like they can't please you or they're not valuable to you. And just lastly, if we have any Marvel fans in the audience, remembering that even amongst superheroes, people who do extraordinary things, um, people always work better together. And it's wonderful to have a team of people around you to be able to contribute and help you to do the things that you think are important. So that's a little bit more about superhero syndrome.
So type 3 is the natural genius type of imposter syndrome. These are going to be individuals who think that they need to be kind of a natural genius and just automatically understand everything super quickly, be good at things really fast. And so they're really judging themselves based off of how easy it is for them to learn new things or new skills, how fast they can do it. They're not looking so much at the effort or the learning process. And so if it does take them a long time to master something, if they're, needing some time for that learning process or they need to practice this new skill, they might feel really ashamed or they might doubt themselves if that's their experience. They might also kind of relate with the perfectionists by having really high expectations, but this is going to be compounded by that judgment, that self judgment about wanting to get everything right on the very first try. So if they're not able to do something, right away, if it's not going very easily for them, then some kind of self-doubt alarms might be going off in their brain. This might be you if you're really used to excelling without a lot of effort. If things tend to just go very well for you, and that's kind of what your expectation becomes. If you tend to get straight A's or gold stars and everything, or you expect that of yourself. You might have also been told a lot as a kid that you were the smart one in your family or in your peer group. And you might not like the idea of having a mentor or like asking for help because you think, well, I can handle everything on my own. If you do run into a setback, you might feel that your confidence, your self confidence really crumbles. Because if you're not performing well, especially quickly or easily, you might again feel that shame and self doubt. And you might even avoid challenges because it's uncomfortable trying something that you're not great at. So people who fall into this natural genius category really kind of expect themselves to naturally be great at things really quickly. And then if that's not the case, they're going to feel a lot of shame and doubt and low confidence in that situation. So when it comes to addressing it, if you kind of see yourself in this category, one thing that can help is to kind of see yourself as a work in progress instead of having this expectation that you're always already perfect. Um, you can kind of invest in that lifelong learning process and practicing skill building instead of really having these high standards of instant, easy success. Um, you can focus on, embracing that process, which is, of course, a very human thing. Learning is a process, and it takes a very long time to get good at new skills. And so, if you want to get better at new skills, if you want to change behaviors or learn something new, you can of course do that. It's not a bad thing to want to do those things or to want to have, more knowledge or to become better or faster at something. But um, it's, building these things over time and not really pulling yourself down for not being good at something in the moment and just really valuing that progress that you're making over time and that investment of effort and skill. um, Maria and I were doing some research in getting ready for this presentation and found that it takes 10,000 hours or more to become like an expert at something. So that learning process really is not instant, is not super fast. It can take quite a while to build up a skill. So the natural genius really is just a myth.
The next type that we're going to focus on is the soloist, and by its name, you might sort of get what this one is more about. It's the person that always feels like, um, in order to show their independence and their worth, they have to do everything by themselves. So you can't, we've been conditioned all these many years throughout our whole education, especially K through 12, of like, oh, you have to do your own work, you can't work with anyone, or it's cheating. And so the soloist really like has that as an ingrained quality, that you have to do everything by yourself, and that if you need to ask for help, then it's somehow a reflection on the quality of the work that you provide. It's not really showing what you can do. So you may have some soloist tendencies if you feel like you always need to accomplish everything on your own without any help from anyone. If you say regularly, or if this sounds familiar to you, I don't need anyone's help. Um, and then the last example, if you frame requests in terms of the requirements of the project rather than your own needs. So this one to me is really important to talk about, because um, if you're very focused on the task, sometimes you kind of lose sight of like why you're doing the task in the first place, what the project is about, what you're meant to learn. Um, about the project, and not just, needing to check it off of a checklist, but actually what's the takeaway, what's the thing you're going to take, how is it going to help you as a student, as a human, as, a college student, as a parent, to complete that project. So if you don't spend time reflecting on the actual nature of the thing you're trying to accomplish and just see it as another thing that you have to kind of check off, then you're not even identifying the things that you need. So if you're working on, a school assignment, and maybe it's you have the choice to work as a group or independently, um, you know, chances are you might have different skills in a group that you can tap into, and it can really enhance the project, or you can learn something, you can learn a new skill. you can learn a presentation style. Um, and so if you're kind of always focused on like, I need to complete this by myself, the quality might not be up to what you could produce with a group. So this one has just that very strong need to just have the spotlight on them at all times, sort of it could be to the detriment of the project. So if you feel like, oh yes, this describes me, or I kind of relate to this, just remember that there's really no shame in asking for help when you need it. And even if you're not sure if you do need it, but just even if you have an independent project, maybe talking it through with an advisor, with Gwen or myself, or a friend, classmate, like not necessarily that you need their help on the work, but just like talking it through. Sometimes that's very helpful and can help you to process what you're trying to achieve. Also, if it's a class assignment, please go talk to your instructors, the people who will be assessing you and grading you, because their input may be very valuable, should be very valuable. Or if you have other colleagues, peers who have previously taken the class, those are great folks to chime in with. And then if you are wanting to work or have to work in a group, just looking at everyone's skills, what everyone's really good at, and then that can be a way to enhance the project that you're working on. If you don't know how to do something, and at some point you're going to run into something you don't know how to do, it's inevitable, it happens to all of us. So, seek out someone that you trust, um, who's who is a fan of yours, a supporter of yours, whose advice you really value. And if you don't have these folks in your life, or if you are not sure who to talk to, please come talk to us because we can kind of help you identify some folks. But it's always nice just to know that you have like a mentor or a close friend or a classmate that you can go to. You can also maybe a coworker or a colleague, or just like anyone um, whose input that you value, can be just a great source of support for you as you're going through. Even somebody within the field that you're interested in pursuing, like networking is a really important thing and can lead to great benefits for you in the future.
So our final type is type 5, the expert. These are individuals who are really focused on what they know and how much they know or how much they can do. So if we could measure how much knowledge someone has or how much skill someone has, in like a percentage, then these are the people that really want like a super high percentage. They want to know a lot, they want to be able to do a lot, um, because they have this fear that they're never going to know enough, that they're never going to measure up. And they could be afraid of being exposed as inexperienced or unknowledgeable or kind of looking like they're a fake of some kind. This could definitely come up if you're in like a competitive major. Maybe you're seeing other people that might know more than you. There could be an element of comparing yourself to others in this situation, um, but that doesn't always have to be the case either. This might be you if you kind of shy away from applying to perhaps job postings unless you meet every single one of the requirements for that job. Um, People who are in this category might feel like if they're not perfect, they're not good enough. If they're not an expert, they're not good enough. And so they want to have so much knowledge and preparation beforehand, or they think that they shouldn't even try. Um, they might also seek out like more trainings, more certifications, just be constantly chasing more knowledge, constantly trying to improve their skills because they think that they have to be always, on that grind to be able to succeed. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, this can definitely go to a level where it becomes harmful to a person. This could also be you if, say, you're in a role like, whether you're in your major or you have a particular job for quite a while, but you still feel like you just don't know enough. Maybe you feel like other people know more, or maybe you're just judging yourself and thinking that I personally don't know as much as I should. Um, I think people in this category like to should themselves a lot. Like, I should know more. I should have these skills. I should have more knowledge, or I'm not good enough. And then another characteristic of this category could be if you're someone who kind of you don't feel good about it if someone says you're an expert, or if someone does congratulate your progress or your skills or your knowledge. You might be like, no, not really. I'm not there yet. They might recognize that they're a work in progress, but they feel probably pretty down on themselves because of that. They want to get to this, high level of knowledge, this high level of competence with, again, probably some unrealistic expectations there. If you kind of relate to these things, some things that you might consider trying would be recognizing that, this tendency to always be looking for more information, to always be preparing more, learning more. Well, that's not a bad thing to, want to seek out that knowledge. This can also kind of be a form of procrastination, and it can kind of get in your way of actually starting something, or looking out for new opportunities or trying new things if you feel like you're just never quite ready because you just don't know enough and you're just not prepared enough. Um, that can be a form of procrastination that is kind of holding a person back in this situation. Another thing that you could try is what we call just in time learning. This is where you get a new skill or you learn something new at the time that you need it, instead of as a, maybe someday I'll need to know this kind of thing. So let's say if you are, working a particular job and your responsibilities are changing, instead of kind of hoarding knowledge or trying to build up all these skills for, a rainy day someday in the future, kind of giving yourself this false comfort. If you do more of a just in time approach and you learn kind of what you need on the job as you go, and you kind of have this more flexible approach to learning in the situation that you actually find yourself in, that can save you a little bit of time and energy, but also allow you to apply yourself better to those situations where that knowledge is actually needed. Our third bullet point here kind of builds on that as well. There are opportunities to use all of that knowledge that you've been accumulating, all those skills that you've been developing, and there are going to be different spaces for different people and different kinds of skills. So you can always be a mentor or a volunteer of different kinds to kind of hone those skills a little bit more, use the knowledge that you have, share what you have with other people, and continue to build on those skills in a way that is functional and beneficial. And this can also help you kind of start to get over some of that, I don't know enough and I'm not good enough kind of feeling, because you can, learn more and know more and prove that you are, good where you're at and you're still a work in progress and continuing to grow. You can apply those skills in a lot of different spaces. Um, this could look a lot of different ways for a lot of different people with a lot of different skills. So it's kind of broad advice. If you want more specific advice, you can always talk to your advisor about your own personal situation. But applying that knowledge and applying those skills can continue to help you build those skills, but also use the ones that you already have and show that you are good enough because you already have a lot of awesome skills already.
So in looking at the 5 types of imposter syndrome, some of them do overlap, as we mentioned, and but 4, particularly 4 out of the 5, have one really large thing in common, and that is this myth that we have here, that we all have to do everything by ourselves. So the except for perfectionism, which could have some of this attribute, but the others, like the superhero, the expert, the soloist, and the natural genius, sorry, um, those really emphasize our own work, the work that we have to do by ourselves and have to show that we did ourselves. So one really huge way, if you identify with any of those 4 in particular, but any of the types of imposter syndrome, one way you can really address that is to seek out your support network. So identify those people around you, hopefully some in trio, hopefully your trio advisor, as well as other resources throughout the campus, friends, family, anyone who is supportive of you and what you want to achieve. Um, Making sure you have those people around you, to be there and to, talk things out with, and to help you out, and maybe even come up with a plan. We have peer mentors in trio, so lots of good opportunities that Gwen and I will be happy to help you kind of identify those areas where you can um, implement some of these strategies to really kind of get outside. Imposter syndrome is very, I think in all its forms, it's the way that we experience it can vary. And it's very individualistic, very kind of a personal reflection of our own worth. And so, um, again, it's really helpful to talk through some of that and to try and get at um, the 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 areas that you feel like are kind of holding you back a little bit or not allowing you to see all the progress that you have already made and the achievements that you've already accomplished. So just remember, your community in Trio and in other places is here for you. And so hopefully that's something that you either feel like you have already or that's something that you want to work toward and to build a strong community for yourself. And finally, we have some handouts for you. We have the little um, fun poster that shows the different types of imposter syndrome. Gwen found a really awesome like 30-day self-care challenge that has a lot of great tips for addressing imposter syndrome. We have some other handouts for you. We can send those to you electronically, or you can drop by the Trio office and pick them up. But just some final takeaways as we're wrapping up the presentation. So we do want to address that even though imposter syndrome is huge for many of us and many of our TRIO students in particular, with the students with the identities that we serve in TRIO, there is something to be said. It's not always imposter syndrome. Sometimes, or there are always systemic inequities in our society and our culture that can also mimic um, the things that imposter syndrome makes us feel as well. Because systemic inequities, racism, sexism, transphobia, all of these big ideas that affect very many people also tell us we're not good enough and not worthy enough. So, sometimes it does come from like a system um, that's outside of us and it's not really coming from within. But if there is some of that coming from within, and if you really do identify with the any one of the 5 types of imposter syndrome that we talked about, we do want you to know that there are some steps you can take. So first, you do want to acknowledge what you are feeling. Is it frustration? Is it, feelings of not feeling worthy enough or that you've accomplished enough? Um, it's really important to kind of see what is that feeling, and maybe we can help you identify if it's coming from like an external source or from within. And it could be both too. We also hope that you take a moment to think about who are your connections, who is your network, who is your support system. Um, and when you have doubts, as we all do, um, it's easy just to like accept them and internalize them and make them part of your own internal voice. But we hope that you can challenge some of those and ask yourself, why do I feel like this? Why don't I think I can do this? What evidence do I have? Because I have all this other evidence that shows me I can, and I have. So if just even taking a second to ask like, where's it coming from, can be very helpful to kind of curb some of that doubt. Also comparing yourself to others. I think particularly for those who fall into the natural genius um, type of imposter syndrome, where if something isn't coming easily to you and you think it's coming easy to everybody else, like it's easy to put yourself as like, oh, well, I'm just not gonna get it. I just can't get this. Um, and so just realizing that everyone is in a different part of their journey. And for some people, some things are going to seem very easy or they will pick up skills, easier than other people, but that doesn't take away anything from the person who did have to work a little harder or did have to struggle. Sometimes those are actually the ones that feel more of an accomplishment when you do have to struggle through. And it doesn't just kind of come to you like breathing, because then you can really pinpoint the work that you had to do in order to achieve that skill or that measure of success. So that's why it's super important not to like compare yourself, because you might not be comparing the appropriate things. And as Gwen mentioned, true perfectionism is impossible. I mean, it just is all the time. Like a few things might, really seem perfect and that's awesome, but um, it's not going to happen 100% of the time. So setting yourself up to fail, it doesn't make you a fraud. It just means you couldn't reach an impossibly high standard that nobody could reach. So perfectionism, while it's a trait that many of us have, or many within the trio community, I feel have, and it can really be motivating and drive you towards some really great accomplishments. When it starts to get in your way is when you're feeling like you're not accomplishing because you're not reaching this kind of impossible measure. And then finally, I remember the first time I heard this several years ago, and I've been wanting to share this with everyone because I think it's really true. I think particularly with our trio type students and even my own daughter, I try to remind her to be as kind and compassionate to yourself as you are to other people. So if you have someone coming to you who's struggling, who's just like, I don't know if I can do it, and you know, um, I can't get things that easily, or um, who's really wanting to accomplish something, but it doesn't feel like they can. You would, most of our trio students are the best, and um, we will often be very kind and compassionate and encouraging, and we have to remember to treat ourselves with that same level of respect and encouragement, because you know sometimes the loudest voice in your head is yours, and it's just important to feel that um, encouragement and kindness, and give yourself grace. Like, well, yeah, it's hard, but I'll figure it out, I'll accomplish this. So anyway, just I think that's an important way that we can get past some of the doubts and things, and just a new way to reframe how we view, like, when we get frustrated with ourselves. And we can be frustrated a little bit, but you know turning that frustration into a plan, into action, into sharing um, your struggles or your needs with others is like a very actionable thing that you can do that will make you uh, actually achieve progress toward your goals. So thank you all so much for viewing the presentation. Gwen and I had a good time putting this together, and we hope that it was helpful. And if please come by and talk to us a little bit more if you want to just kind of talk through some of this. And again, like I said, we have the handouts here for you. And yeah, we hope we'll see you at the next workshop. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.